There are moments in history when a country changes quietly, and then there are moments when millions decide they have waited long enough.
Check Teddy's heartbeat.
For decades, India's young people were told the same story: study harder, score higher, work harder than everyone else, and success will follow. Millions believed that promise. They sacrificed childhoods, family savings, their mental health, and years of relentless preparation. Because in India, one examination can decide an entire lifetime. Then, something broke. Not inside an examination hall, not inside a classroom, but inside the minds of an entire generation. For months, students across the country watched headlines pile up.
My parents sacrificed everything for my education. An exam cancellation isn't just a delay, it costs my family another year of hope and money.
Competitive examinations postponed, entrance tests cancelled, questions over repeated paper leaks, investigations,
Nobody prepared me
arrests.
for the possibility that the system itself might fail us.
And a growing feeling that the system itself could no longer be trusted. It wasn't simply about one examination, or one ministry, or even one government. It became something much bigger. A question: if hard work no longer guarantees opportunity, what does? Then, something happened that almost no political strategist, no journalist, and perhaps not even the government itself expected. An insult became a movement.
भारत के मुख्य न्यायमूर्ति
मैं सूर्यकांत जो भारत के उच्चतम न्यायालय का मुख्य न्यायमूर्ति नियुक्त हुआ।
A movement became a symbol.
Parasites in society. You attack you people, you attack the system, and you want to join hands with them. There are youngsters like cockroaches. They don't get any employment. They don't have any place in profession. Some of them become media. Some of them become social media. Some of them become RTI activists. Some of them become another activists, and they start attacking everyone.
And that symbol was a cockroach. Not a lion, not an eagle, not a tiger, a cockroach. One of the most disliked creatures on earth. But for thousands of young Indians, it meant something entirely different. It meant survival. Crush it, and it returns. Ignore it, and it spreads. The name was controversial. The message was impossible to ignore. Within weeks, what began as an online satirical campaign evolved into one of the country's fastest growing youth movements, drawing millions of followers on social media before spilling into the streets. And then, the protests reached India's capital. Barricades appeared across New Delhi. Security forces surrounded Parliament. Thousands gathered despite restrictions. The demand was simple: accountability. But as the crowds grew larger, so did the questions. Who started this movement? Why had millions rallied behind an insect? And why did India's biggest youth protest begin with a single word: cockroach?
Death of democracy. क्या यही है? ये क्या हो रहा है? Tear gas छोड़े जा रहे हैं हम पे. We were so peaceful. We were just asking for justice. What they did? Tear gas. This is not right.
Every movement has an origin. Some begin with an election, some begin with a revolution, and some begin with a sentence. In May 2026, during court proceedings, remarks by India's Chief Justice triggered an unexpected public reaction. Many young people interpreted the comments as dismissive of unemployed youth, although the Chief Justice later clarified that his criticism was directed at people using fake or bogus degrees, not young people in general. But by then, the damage had already been done. Across social media, the word cockroach had taken on a life of its own. For millions of young Indians, it no longer sounded like an insult. It sounded like recognition. Recognition of years spent preparing for competitive examinations, only to face uncertainty, paper leak controversies, limited opportunities, and an increasingly difficult job market. The frustration had been building for years. Now, it finally had a symbol. Among those watching the public reaction was a 30-year-old engineer named Abhijit Dipki. At the time, Dipki was living in the United States. He wasn't a veteran politician. He wasn't leading a political party. He wasn't even planning a nationwide protest. According to interviews he later gave to Reuters, the idea began almost as satire. A single social media post asked a simple question: what if all the cockroaches came together? The response surprised everyone. Within days, millions of young people began following the page. The movement called itself the Cockroach Jantar Party. Its description was deliberately provocative. The voice of the lazy and unemployed. It took every label that critics had used against young people. and turned those labels into identity. Political analysts quickly noticed something unusual. This wasn't being driven by traditional political rallies. It wasn't built through television debates. It wasn't organized through party offices. It spread almost entirely online. Short videos, memes, live streams, comment sections. One post became 1,000. 1,000 became a million. In less than a week, the movement's Instagram following reportedly surpassed that of India's ruling party, making it one of the fastest growing political communities on Indian social media. But popularity alone doesn't create a movement. A movement needs a cause. And by mid-2026, India already had one. Repeated controversies surrounding major
Students
competitive
should not have to
examinations.
protest for fairness. Fairness should already be part of education.
Including allegations of paper leaks and irregularities.
I wasn't afraid of difficult questions. I was afraid that honesty wouldn't be enough to succeed anymore.
Had shaken public confidence.
Behind every roll number is a dream, a family, and years of sacrifice. Please don't let corruption decide our future.
These issues were being investigated through official inquiries and court proceedings, while students increasingly questioned whether merit alone could guarantee opportunity. The cockroach Jantar Party did not create that anger. It gave it a microphone. What began as satire was becoming organization. What began online was preparing to enter the streets, and its founder made an announcement that would transform an internet phenomenon into a national political story. He was returning to India, not to contest an election, but to lead a protest. A protest that, within weeks, would bring thousands of young people to the gates of Parliament. Movements rarely succeed because of one person. They succeed
हमारा प्रोटेस्ट जैसे चला रहा था वैसे ही चलता रहेगा. हमारा प्रोटेस्ट तब तक वापस नहीं लिया जाएगा जब तक धर्मेंद्र प्रधान का इस्तीफा नहीं होता.
when millions recognize their own story in someone else's voice. By the middle of 2026, the Cockroach Jantar Party had become one of India's fastest growing youth movements online. But a movement built on social media still needed legitimacy. Then, a familiar face entered the story. Not a politician, not an influencer, an educator, an engineer, a man whose work had inspired millions long before this movement ever existed, Sonam Wangchuk. For years, Wangchuk had been known for educational innovation in Ladakh and environmental work, earning international recognition including the Ramon Magsaysay Award.
ये क्या कर लिया तुमने मेरी बच्ची? ना के आंखें खोलो चिन्नी, मम्मी से बात करो.
In July
Please,
2026, he became one of the most recognizable faces associated with the growing education protest after beginning a hunger strike demanding accountability over examination controversies. His decision changed everything. Until then, many people had dismissed the Cockroach Jantar Party as another internet trend, another viral hashtag, another social media rebellion destined to disappear. But a hunger strike changes the language of protest. It replaces slogans with sacrifice. Every passing day became a countdown.
और हम चाहते हैं कि सोनम सर अपना अनशन तोड़े क्योंकि हम भी चाहते हैं सोनम सर अपनी जान और धोखे में डाले. उनकी जिंदगी इस देश के लिए बहुत हमने उनको कहा था पिछली बार आपने हमको 5 घंटे बिठा कर रखा, 5 घंटे में से बस 10 मिनट ही बात करिए. ऐसा कौन करता है? पूरा टाइम वेस्ट करता है. एक तरफ बात करने के लिए बुलाया था, दूसरी तरफ बच्चों के ऊपर लाठीचार्ज करा था. तो अभी इसके बाद जो भी बात होगी वो जंतर मंतर पर होगी.
Day 5, Day 10, Day 15, Day 20. News cameras returned, students gathered, doctors monitored his condition. Across television studios and social media, one question dominated the national conversation. How long could this continue? As Wangchuk's health deteriorated, Delhi police moved him to Safdarjung Hospital, stating that the action followed medical advice and directions arising from court proceedings concerning his condition. Supporters, however, accused authorities of removing him against his wishes and argued that it undermined the protest. Those competing narratives quickly became part of the national debate. The movement now faced a choice: end the protest or escalate it. Its founder, Abhijit Dipki, made his decision. He announced that he would continue the agitation and begin an indefinite hunger strike himself, calling on supporters to stay united and proceed with the planned march to Parliament. Every movement has a moment when retreat becomes impossible. This was that moment.
Look, they're deploying tear gas. Look up. People are running. They're pushing us back.
The objective was no longer just to attract attention. It was to force the country's political leadership to respond. The date had already been chosen, the 20th of July 2026, the opening day of Parliament's monsoon session. The message spread rapidly across social media. Chalo Sansad, March to Parliament. Authorities prepared for the possibility of large demonstrations. Security around central Delhi was tightened. Restrictions on public gatherings were imposed in sensitive areas. Police warned that any attempt to march toward Parliament without permission would invite action. Organizers insisted their demonstration would remain peaceful.
The government really needs to get its act together, otherwise the youth of this country is going to take them down. What happened on 20th was a trailer. If the government doesn't agree, millions more will come to Delhi, because this time we will not hold back. We will not stay silent. We have seen too much. We have witnessed too much, experienced too much.
Government representatives described the movement differently, arguing that political interests were attempting to exploit public anger. Opposition leaders, meanwhile, expressed support for many of the protesters' demands. The confrontation was no longer only about education. It had entered the center of India's political conversation. For millions watching online, everything seemed to be building toward a single day. Would Parliament listen? Would protesters be allowed to march? Or would confrontation become inevitable? No one knew, but everyone was watching. Because what had started as a satirical response to a controversial remark had evolved into one of the most closely watched youth movements in recent Indian politics. And the biggest test was less than 24 hours away. The next morning, thousands would begin walking toward Parliament. By sunset, there would be tear gas, detentions, injuries, conflicting versions of what happened, and a nation divided over a single question. Were these students demanding accountability, or had India's biggest youth movement just become something much larger?
The youth heavily voted for this government. How do you think they feel? They feel completely betrayed. And I'm sorry, but I don't care what you present. Our duty is to stand with them.
The 25th of July 2026. 5 days. That was all it took. In just 5 days, students forced an entire nation to stop, listen, and confront a question that could no longer be ignored. The protests ended. The streets fell silent. The barricades came down. The education minister resigned. For many, it felt like a victory. But history teaches us that winning one battle does not end a war. It simply reveals how difficult the road ahead truly is. This movement was never about bringing India down. It was about protecting the promise that every child, regardless of background, deserves a fair and honest chance to succeed. Millions of students, millions of parents. One voice, one demand, trust. The world watched, not because India was weak, but because India's youth showed that ordinary students, united by courage and conviction, could move an entire nation. Every generation inherits courage. The real question is whether it chooses to use it. This documentary is dedicated to every student who refused to give up, to every parent who believed education could change a life, to every teacher who chose integrity over silence, and to every young Indian who still believes that honesty is stronger than corruption. It is also dedicated to Sonam Wangchuk, whose voice inspired countless young people to believe that education must always stand for truth, justice, and the future of every child. But above all, this is not just Chinny's story. It is the story of 17 young lives and of countless others whose names may never appear in headlines, but whose dreams mattered just the same. It is dedicated to every NEET aspirant who dreamed of healing others but never got the chance to heal their own future. To every mother and father who sacrificed everything they had, believing education would transform their child's life. And to every family whose hopes were shattered, whose dreams were buried, and whose silence still echoes through empty rooms. May they never be remembered only as numbers. May they always be remembered as young people who deserved fairness, dignity, opportunity, and hope. May their stories inspire a future where no student is ever forced to choose between a dream and despair. Because every generation has its own freedom struggle. Some fought colonial rule, some fought discrimination. This generation is fighting for trust, for the belief that merit should never be compromised and that every dream deserves a fair chance. This documentary is not asking for sympathy. It is asking for responsibility, so that no family has to place another photograph beneath a garland, so that no dream ends before it even begins, so that every child can continue to believe that hard work matters, honesty matters, and justice matters. This story ends here, but the responsibility belongs to all of us, because the future is already watching.
नहीं चेहरे सब हाल वही सच दबा झूठ बड़ा कौन यहाँ किसका खुदा शोर नहीं वार करो नींद नहीं शिकार करो नाम नहीं काम बड़ा खेल यही सालों चला कदम बड़ा सिर उठा संजीरें आज कबा भूख जली रात टली खामोशी अब ना रही उठ 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 उठ
Gentlemen, CJP rejected our offer. Every channel failed. They refused to negotiate.
We always believed the people would remain divided. Caste, language, identity. We thought those walls would stand forever.
But something changed. They stopped asking who belongs to which group. They started asking who benefits. That question is dangerous. History remembers young people who refused to surrender. Bhagat Singh, Netaji, they proved that courage spreads faster than fear. I see the same fire again, not in one hero, in an entire generation. Gen Z, they don't inherit silence, they inherit questions.
If a generation rejects corruption, no network survives, no empires, no system survives. The greatest threat isn't one person, it's an awakened generation.
If they want to destroy corruption, they'll have to fight something far bigger than a man, far bigger than a government, far bigger than an office. They'll have to fight that has learned to survive for generations. And they still think the story ends here. No, this was only the beginning, because they haven't seen the real mafia yet.
Mafia.